quite hear you.
Hello.
Oh, now I can hear you. Yep, there you are.
Okay.
Hey,
Long time no see.
that's right. You look well.
As do you.
Your screen is reflecting in your glass.
Oh yeah. Maybe I don't
You
need
have
it.
to be careful of that. There you go. Or just angle it. Good old trick.
Well, I don't want to look like I'm looking down on.
I love your shirt. You know, I should be wearing something like that too, actually. It's fabulous.
This is from when we first met in 2014.
I love it. I love it. I was just thinking about that, actually. Yeah, it's so cool.
Yeah.
That was Elizabeth's design.
Oh yeah, they all were. And we just had a little celebration of life for her.
Yeah, I heard.
Very nice.
I really wanted to come down for it too, but it was just in the wrong time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, before we dig in, let's just real quick, what are you having for dinner?
So I'm having I basically sent you the picture of my salad, and here it is. It's fabulously homemade. It has tuna, it has eggs to cover the proteins, has some strawberry for a little C vitamin action, has arugula, it has crispy rice, crispy Parmesan, carrots.
Wow.
Apples.
That sounds amazing.
As I grew up, my mom was like, you have to have carrots because carrots helps your eyesight in the dark. Whether it's an urban legend or a mom story, I don't know. But ever since then, I've always had carrots with my salad.
It made it all the way over here to America as well. I was supposed to eat carrots as a youth also.
Yeah, right. I think there's something good in carrots, but if you eat too much, apparently you get yellow palms.
Yes, I've heard that as well. So you don't have too much in your salad, right?
Just a bit.
Okay. Well,
I think we would both do well in trivial bar pub quiz, I think.
Yes. I have a small salad as well.
Okay.
And
What's in it? What's in it? Oh, some yellow things?
I've got yellow peppers, tomatoes, mushrooms, cheese, and a balsamic over an arugula mix with spinach. And then I made salmon. I don't know if you can see it. I'll put up a picture.
Can see it.
Salmon, green beans, and potato wedges. And
no fattening gravy or sauce, just like, it feels like it's a very lean meal.
I've been eating better.
And it shows. You look great. Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I've been riding my bike a lot, and Gwen and I go for 20 miles every weekend.
20 miles, that's hardcore.
Yeah. Well, I do about 90 miles a week because I do it every day.
Wow.
But then she and I go together on the weekends, and yeah, we just find a nature trail and have a lot of fun.
I think that's awesome. When I was just in Denmark for summer vacation, and all the Danes, of course, every Dane bikes. But I saw this new thing I hadn't seen anywhere else, and it was basically this. It looked like a big fat necklace. A lot of them were wearing, and I was like, I saw one wearing it, then I saw another wearing it, and then I saw a lot of people wearing it. Turns out it's like one of those. It's almost like a safety cushion for a car, but for a biker. So you don't have to wear a helmet. You have this thing around your neck, and if you fall, it sort of blows up and protects your neck and your head. It goes above your head. It
goes above your head. Interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
I know.
I was taking advantage of you talking so that I could start to eat, because the whole point of Dishin Film with FantaSci is to share a meal with a filmmaker and talk shop.
I love it.
And going back to when we first met in 2014, that's when you were promoting your film Into the Dark.
That's right, which was a hardcore sci-fi.
Yeah, and it didn't feel like it was actually kind of a longer film. How long was that film?
14 minutes.
That's a pretty good length, but it didn't feel like it. It was really snappy.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's like, as a filmmaker, whatever, who's been around the block a few times at this point, a lot of young filmmakers sort of submit films that are 25 minutes or 30 minutes to film festivals. I'm like, I think the golden sort of ratio is less than 15 for sure. Mm-hmm. And if you can make it between 10 and 12, you're in the best of shapes, I think. But so 14 probably in hindsight is too long. I could probably have cut some of it out, but
well, we've been to enough festivals. We always hear the shorter the better.
Yeah. But that said, I've seen 40-minute shorts that worked beautifully, and they've earned every minute. It's just most of the time people don't earn the minutes. So
that's the episode 40 minutes.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I've seen 5-minute short films that seemed like it was too long. So it just goes to show you it's all about how you put it together and what you fill it with.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
had a sci-fi film in that festival too.
in that year I had Tech Squad. Now, to your point, when we went to Bare Bones together, that was with a different sci-fi film I had, and it was 15, and it was a little long.
It was very good. I remember. I liked it.
Thank you. Now sci-fi, even though my festival focuses on fantasy and sci-fi, and you've done your fair share of sci-fi films, that's not all you do. You write and act and direct.
Yep.
You directed yourself in Into the Dark.
I directed myself in Into the Dark and The Son, the Father, a more recent sort of psychological horror short film. And the thing that attracts me to staying on the sci-fi chat for a second is it's just this notion that you can sort of create your own version of the rules, so to speak. So I feel it gives freedom to creativity. You can sort of set up what your boundaries are. The difficulty, of course, is to sell that world in a brief time, specifically in a short film, so that it makes enough sense. But if you can do that, then you can sort of set your own parameters, and that could create interesting drama that you couldn't just create from a present day show, for instance.
And that's a nitpicky thing I have, that when shows or movies break their own rules that they've established, it's infuriating to me.
Sure.
In my last episode 0, went over Star Trek with Luke Momo, and I pointed out how they introduced a character who was able to use a transporter beam to go across the galaxy, whereas previously you only went from a spaceship in orbit down to the planet.
Right.
So if you now have a transporter that you can go across the galaxy, you don't need spaceships anymore.
That's a plot hole right there.
It's a plot hole. And I've been rewatching all of Star Trek, the series, and the Voyager one, they had a power problem. They were running out of power, but people were still using the holodeck, where they go in and it creates holograms and it uses up a lot of energy.
It used a lot of power, you'd imagine, right?
Exactly.
Like a microwave. Yeah.
So they have a story they want to tell on the holodeck, but they shouldn't.
Right. No, but it's true. I mean, regardless of what you do, whether it's a supernatural horror, whether it's sci-fi, the rules of the world have to be clear to you as the writer, as the filmmaker, as the storyteller, and then you have to stick within those rules. I mean, you can make the rules, as we talked about just before, whatever you want, which is the beauty of those genres, but once you establish them, you can't mess around with it.
Yeah,
and,
there's always
but you see, even in the big blockbuster movies, you find plot holes in hindsight. There's always someone who points something out. So things slip through the cracks with even the best of writing teams. It happens constantly.
There's a notion, I think it was Neil Gaiman, I'm not sure who came up with it. It's called the flying snowman, where you can believe Superman, a man can fly and can do all those things, but there's the one thing that'll pull you out of it. In the case of like Frosty the Snowman, you can believe he came to life, he sings with children, but if he were to take off like Superman, you'd be like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I mean, you totally bought a singing, talking snowman, but he can't fly. That's stupid. So there's always one thing in a film that can set you off and pull you right out of the film, and then you're done. You're like, oh, this is stupid.
Yeah, well, yeah, usually that happens to me pretty early on, and it could be the smallest thing, which is, a burden I have to bear, because it doesn't really help me or make it a nice experience for me sometimes, but the smallest thing will pull me out of something, and then it's hard to get back in. And it could be like a misdirected extra in the back that sort of is smiling in a scene where he or she should not be smiling, and I'm like, nobody caught that. And already I'm thinking about the filmmaking process of that film, and I'm out for the next 5 minutes, and I have to find my way back in, at which point I've missed something or whatever. So it's totally my bad. But
to your point, even the big boys make mistakes. Game of Thrones had a coffee cup on a table.
Famously, I saw that. Exactly.
And not only did nobody notice it when they shot it, nobody noticed it when they edited it or approved it before airing. I mean, because that could have been fixed digitally pretty quickly.
Easily.
Exactly.
But it goes to show, Game of Thrones probably, I don't know what happened there, because that's pretty crazy that slipped through the cracks. But, with network TV, the scheduling is so fast from shooting to actually airing. It's so tight that would not be a great surprise to me that could have happened on network TV. But on a show like Game of Thrones, when it's a it's a whole different ball game in terms of budget and time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy nobody caught it, but it could also be that no, because they would have edited out if they like that scene more than others. Maybe they just, yeah, who knows? It really boggles the mind that they didn't catch it.
Speaking of network TV, you've done quite a bit. You've been on Elementary, Blue Bloods, Blacklist. We'll go over Blacklist
Yep.
more in depth, but
did Limitless before it got canceled. It lasted one season, alas.
What tell us more about that process of being on a show for an episode or two or 8 or 10?
Well, so there's a big difference between coming on a show for like one episode and then what I just did for Blacklist, which was 11 episodes. I think it came to be in season 8 altogether. Because it's like when you come in for a day or 2 or 3 on a show. I think Elementary I was on for 6 days, but you would never know it from seeing the episode because it was just, there's so many physical things that ended up being cut into nothing. And so my presence on the show is minimal, but I end up getting like 6 days. Is that you're in with a character where hair and makeup and whatever the crew have seen millions of you come in and out, right? So they're like, oh, you're that guy. Yeah, hey, how are you? Say their names and then you're instantly forgotten. Coming on a show for a season, all of a sudden you're elevated into a status as like one of the main characters for that season. So everybody looks at you slightly differently. There is a sense of people taking the time to know who you are, know your name, know your preferences, know what should be in your trailer when you arrive for work. They know the cup of tea, they know the type of tea you want, they know whatever. So it was really interesting to feel part of a team. You know, I used to do a lot of theater, and my favorite part of theater was that community you would build during rehearsals. I never really liked the shows as much as the preparation and the rehearsals and the connecting with all these other artists. That I loved. And since I stopped doing theater, I've sort of missed that. Coming back on a TV show for an entire season, you get some of that back because you do develop a community. You do recognize the actors who come back all the time. And as I said, it becomes a little bit like a family. So that was really wonderful to regain that. The difficulty with a network show like The Blacklist, something so big as that, is that one of the reasons I got into acting originally was to collaborate, right? Collaborate with smart writers or smart directors and figure out, you know, what the script means and what the character's arc is and and that is just not present in network TV because there's no time for it. You're sort of expected to do what you did at casting. You're expected to know your character. It's not like somebody comes up and briefs you about your character's history, or you sort of figure that out by yourself, what matters to you. And if you do something wrong, you know, that they don't like, they'll tell you. But if you don't do it wrong, nobody will say anything. You just move on and you just keep going with what you brought to the table. So it's not like you would call over the director and say, listen, let's sit down and talk about, you know, my character for this episode. That just doesn't happen. So it's a different skill set. It's a skill set in not messing up, in being incredibly focused when you're finally on, after waiting around for a long time. When you're on, and you have 60 people on the other side of the lens looking at what you're doing, and you really don't have time to mess up. And you still have to act under that pressure. And that's where experience comes in, and focus and concentration. So that becomes a skill set on a network TV show, is you have to sort of make choices before you almost get there, and then you have to see them through regardless of what's thrown at you. Whereas in an indie film, it's a different thing. You know, there's a little more luxury to really explore and to see, let's try this. Oh, that didn't work. What if I do this? And the director would be like, yeah, let's try that. Let's do one more take and do what you want, kind of thing.
Yeah,
you know, which is sort of the vibe of the indie world. And
on TV, they kind of have to lean into cliches a little more.
Well, they just have to get it done. It's a time machine. You know, it's so expensive. Every minute is expensive because if they go overtime, then the entire crew is on overtime and blah, 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 blah. And so, you know, they have they're much more money driven in that sense. But it's also a well-oiled machine. I mean, I came on season 8, so they know how this thing go. You know, they know what the process is. Everybody knows what the deal is. You get the call sheet the night before. You start getting the scripts 2 weeks before. You're getting the final script sort of day before, and So you sort of get into the rhythm of this big machine. I said to a friend of mine, it's kind of like indie film is like being on a little, sort of fishing vessel with a couple of buddies, and you're like, oh, let's go ashore over there and check out that island, and then jump back on the boat and have a beer, and then we'll go over there and pull out an anchor and fish there. Whereas being on a TV show like that, you're on a cruise liner. It's like massive, and you're in a cabin somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if the cruise liner makes a turn, you're barely aware of it, but you're just on board, and you just have to make those turns with the cruise liner. And that's a perfect analogy for sort of indie film versus a TV show.
So going back to your, you said when you started, you went to Trinity College?
Trinity College, not in the US. There's a Trinity College in the US apparently, or Trinity School or something that I see t-shirts for. But yeah, this is Trinity College in Dublin. Mm-hmm. My father had a factory in Ireland when I grew up. So as a kid, I used to visit Ireland sometimes on sort of business trips with my dad.
Your dad, John DeLorean?
Exactly. No, that'd be nice. And so I always loved Trinity College. It's a beautiful old campus started by Cambridge originally in Ireland. And so when it came time to get serious about acting and apply to somewhere, I thought of London, but I always had this Trinity College in mind, almost as a dress rehearsal for London, thinking, well, I'll give that a shot. And then if it doesn't work out, at least I would have had the experience of acting in English, and then I could go to London and give it a shot there. But I flew over to audition, and they offered me a spot. Like 1 out of, I think, 10 students. So it was pretty exclusive, and I didn't dare turn it down in case I never got into anything in London. So sort of 6 weeks later, I moved to Ireland knowing no one.
Wow.
And that was at 19. And I never looked back or really moved back to Denmark anyway.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, not many people might not know that you're Danish.
Yeah, I mean.
Or as I say, you're my big creamfield Danish.
Right. Yeah, I have born and raised in Denmark, so I've just come back from Denmark, so my accent when I speak is probably stronger than it would be on other times of the year. So it comes and goes. The accent, some people hear it, some people don't. Some people hear they're Irish. That's still there here and there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so born and raised, and then I moved to New York from Dublin after having done pretty much exclusively theater. I did one film over there called Borstal Boy with Sean Hannity. But I wanted to do more TV and film, and that wasn't happening in Ireland. So I moved to New York and oddly used my theater to get into the acting community. And then build out from there. And now eventually I've sort of pretty much fallen out of love with theater and do exclusively indie or TV work when I can get it.
Yeah, I haven't seen you at a festival. Well, of course, we've had a pandemic for a while, but you're very popular on the short film circuit scene. You made quite a few independent short films, and not all your own.
Right. Well, I really love the format of short film. I think it's there's so many advantages there where you hone your craft, right? So to a lot of us starting out, it's a great exercise in what to do and what not to do. And mm-hmm. If you have as an actor, you get very tired of giving away power all the time. I mean, you act as well. Walking into a casting office, doing your bit, walking out of the office, crossing your fingers that what you did, they liked, but it's out of your hands, right? That lack of control is very frustrating. So writing was my initial attempt to take some of that power back, because what I write is mine. It's my world. I create the boundaries, I create the rules. And I knew I could write, but it took me probably about 10 years to write a good script, like a really good script. 10 years of hard work to where I felt I was a really good writer. And then the ultimate power, of course, is to direct what you write. So that became an extension of that. This ambition of eventually directing my own features, I knew I had to direct a short somewhere along the way to sort of get familiar with how that whole thing worked. And so Into the Dark came out of that. It was a sci-fi short script that I had in mind, loosely inspired by a Ray Bradbury story called Kaleidoscope. that I always loved as a kid, and I sort of made my own version of that. Like nobody would ever recognize the story at all, but there were some sparks in there that were similar. And I thought, this is a film that I can shoot in my own apartment with my great friend and DP, Henry B. Lee. The two of us essentially created that film in my apartment. Fifth floor walk up in New York. We built a pod. We built various, the exterior of the pod, the interior of the pod, half of the pods we could film, lengthwise of the pod, and either end of the pod we could film. And so it became this sarcophagus that could be taken apart and put together depending on where you wanted to put the camera. And then you stuck myself in it. Because I knew I could act, and I thought this would be fun to see how much I can get away with basically one actor on screen most of the time. And so I think it held, 14 minutes for sure. It couldn't have been a feature, but it was a good short, and it was a story that had a beginning, middle, and end. So I felt confident about that. But as you know, making films, you sit there and you edit yourself, and you edit and you edit and you look at the clips, and at some point it's so close that you lose track of, like, this could be complete and utter shite or great. And it's really hard to know. So I didn't know until I submitted it to festivals that I had succeeded in creating something that people really enjoyed. So I was grateful for the reception that film got. It really helped.
It did have a great reception. How many festivals did you go to?
Well, I think it's
not physically go to, but get into.
It's another pet peeve of mine when I hear people create shorts, right? And then they have no money left for submissions, and they ended up spending, a lot of their time and energy and other people's money on this film. And then they've entered it into 3, of which they got into none because they had no money left. And I'm like, well, you have to put budget for submissions into your, plan. And so I was always going to submit it to many festivals. So I got into, I think, over 100. But I also submitted to a lot of festivals because that was part of the plan, to try to get it out there as many places as possible, because nobody knew me as a filmmaker. Some people knew me as an actor, but since I was in it, it was also a calling card for me as an actor. I mean, I got work from that film.
I can imagine. I mean, that's what I tell people. Every film you make is a calling card for your next film. You can show somebody, this is what I did, and now I want you to help me make the next one.
That's exactly right. And if you can show a development, I think you're even better off.
Oh, that's what I tell everybody all the time too. The best thing you can do is to hate your old work, because it means you're getting better.
I agree. I mean, hate it with love, right? Because
sure,
you knew what you knew then when you made it, and if you know more now, that's great. And don't make the same mistakes. That's inexcusable.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I can understand George Lucas's sentiment in wanting to go back and tweak his old films. I don't think he made all the correct decisions, but even, some of my films, the longer they're on the festival circuit and you go to see it again, you sit in the theater for the umpteenth time, and I'm like, oh man, I could cut like 10 more frames off that. Right. I could do that. The sound, does that need a remix? Right. You have to abandon it.
So let me ask you this. Do you honestly, so what percentage of him going back to fix those films you think was an honest desire to erase mistakes he had made, and what percentage was studio saying we need a gimmick to sell that we're re-releasing it? Just needed to change a frame so that we can say you retouched it. What do you think the percentages are there?
Well, I think it was all him, because if it was studio driven, all you have to do is upgrade graphics. There was like in Star Wars A New Hope 1977, whenever a TIE fighter is coming at the screen, you can see the cutout of the map, because it's like it was the cell was overlaid on Starfield. You can easily fix that up with computers. Fix up all the little things like that. Right. Don't make Han shoot first or Greedo shoot first.
Right. Okay.
That changes the story. And he was like, same thing with Spielberg and E.T. He changed all the cops' guns to flashlights so it's friendlier for kids. Well, that's stupid.
Right.
People aren't going to aim their flashlights at kids on bikes.
Right, I agree. Yeah. Sure.
So yeah, don't change your story. If you want, and because there is even, I think, Paramount. I have somebody here who is dying to see you.
Oh, hi, friend.
This is Pippin.
I remember seeing this one from the tiniest little puppy. Hi, friend. You're looking right at me.
Say hi to Lucas, Uncle Lucas.
Oh, so cute. Can I just give a shout out to your t-shirt as well while we're at it? Love Your Shorts t-shirt. I just love that film festival so much. And that's actually one of the festivals that you and I really got to become friends, because we were both screening there and you're from the neighborhood close enough.
Yeah.
And
it was great that first year we met. And then I remember us sitting at the breakfast, Filmmaker's breakfast, just talking away. And one of us said, oh yeah, my film next up, it's in some festival in Muskogee, Oklahoma. I think you said it. And I was like, oh, me too.
Bare bones.
And you were like, oh, well, are you going? I was like, no, I'm not going to go. Are you going? You're like, no, I'm not going to go. Well, I'll go if you go.
Exactly.
You want to go? Okay, let's go. And all of a sudden, we had another trip planned.
Exactly right. That was my first trip to Oklahoma, and what a joy that was.
That was a lot of fun. We went to the castle.
Jared and Ray up there were great.
Oh, yes.
And then, of course, Nancy and Jean and Elizabeth Kruckmeyer from Love Your Shorts and the entire gang of Sanford. I mean, that festival truly has a special place in my heart. It's a town that's unique, and it's supported by so many wonderful people.
Oh yeah, and we miss you every year you're not here.
Right, I know. They love and support indie filmmaking. It's such a great thing.
Well, you know, hopefully things don't spike and go back to 2020 again, and we can have you down sometime soon for another festival. Are you working on any new shorts? Are you sticking to TV for now?
Well, the questions are not really, the things you just asked are not really related, because working for TV, sure. Yeah, I have different projects coming up and I'll be acting in different things. But in terms of writing or filmmaking, I'm not in a rush to do another short just for the sake of doing another short. I really want to up the game and do a feature. I kind of feel like doing another short would be fun. I keep balls in the air and I can go out and travel to festivals, but it's also, we have to look into diminished returns after a certain while with short films. I know you have a slightly different opinion about that, but I just feel like the second round I did with The Son, the Father, I still met new people. I still strengthened my relationship with programmers. I saw great friends. I hung out with great friends. We got, some great drinks and we saw each other's work and so forth. But doing a third short or a fourth short, I just feel like then it becomes almost like a hobby where I see friends. We do something fun together and I see what you've done and you see what I've done, but it doesn't serve a purpose and sort of trajectory of where I'm trying to go. And so personally, I'm not necessarily super vested in creating another short. I did do Guest of Honor with Lisa Belcher, whom you know, which is sort of almost by happenstance because she had a script that she wanted me to look at, and then I ended up sort of changing bits and pieces and I became a co-writer, but really it was Lisa's short film. So I wouldn't even call it my third short film. It was really her project. But so I'm putting my efforts into figuring out if I can get a feature done.
What I know that you've written a couple features. Which one are you eyeing?
Well,
or is that more determined by who's willing to put up the money?
It's really a matter of finding the right producing partner, and that's not just in terms of finances. I think there are ways around financing, but I need a partner who feels the same way I do about a particular script, whom I think would be a great partner in crime moving forward. I'm looking for that sort of partner that I can do multiple projects with and we can sort of grow together.
Okay.
So I'm talking to a few different people about that. And then it depends on, I have sort of 5 feature scripts that are ready. 2 of them are under option, so I have 3 others to pick from. And then it depends on which is a smart choice for me as a first-time feature filmmaker. My gut tells me I should do my drama called Halfway about 2 recovering addicts. But it's a drama, so who's going to see that? And do I want to spend, $150,000 on a feature that nobody's going to see? apart from a few festivals here and there, and feel good about that because I know it's a great script, but it's not necessarily the sexiest script because it is a drama? Or do I go with a horror that is more expensive to make, but you have a bigger chance of getting some attention, a bigger chance of selling it, but I know it's not as high art as the other script is.
Mhm.
And so where do I want to put my efforts as a first-time director? And then I did a feature version of Into the Dark, the short film that you've seen. I've written the feature script of that during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's very watchable and filmable, but I'm also not, I'm not 100% convinced. It's like, I've had some people read it who love it. And then I had some other people read it who were like, well, it's interesting, but I feel like you haven't thought this through and this through and this through. And so, you know, I don't want to shoot something that's not ready. So we'll just have to see if I feel strong enough about the version of it. The idea with Into the Dark, the feature, was to shoot it the same style as the short, like with a skeleton crew, drive up into the forest somewhere, bring our set pieces and just shoot over sort of 6 weekends and try to get it done that way. And then if nobody watches it or likes it, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's not too much money out the window. But it might still get some attention because I think it's a good script. So we'll see.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a lot of moving parts, regardless of the direction you go in.
No, I mean, it's balls in the air.
Mhm.
You know it yourself. You act and you write, you direct. It's just you can push your luck in terms of somebody seeing your work and thinking, there's something here that I'd like to work with. I want to be involved with this character, this guy.
Mhm.
I like his brand or his style or whatever, and then we'll see from there. But nobody's offered me, $5 million yet to make my movies. So not that I need that much, people.
Let me check my email. No, me neither. What you've been doing a lot of had a lot of luck in TV. Would you consider more of a permanent role on a show? Let's say CSI does New York again, and you're in New York, and they say, oh, we want you to be a regular.
It's a very valid question, and it's one that's, it's much more possible now than it was in my mind 3 years ago.
Right.
One of the things I learned from being on this show, this entire season pretty much, was that I used to not understand why stars would leave a show after 3 seasons. I'd be like, I don't get it. They're on a successful show. It looks like a lot of fun, great income, blah, 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 and yet they leave the show. I do understand it more now because it is essentially a paycheck, right? When you're doing this stuff, it's really exciting. When you're actually acting and doing what you were trained to do, getting the script, reading through the script, figuring out what your trajectory is, what your notes could be, what you're going to do, that's exciting. But when you're actually on set, there's so much, no surprise to you, but there's so much waiting around where you just kind of feel like you're selling your time. Like this is, many people around the country sell their time at whatever job they're doing, right? So I'm not knocking that. I'm just talking about that experience as a TV regular. It would probably be, it's not as easy a call. Of course, I would say yes. That's the honest, short answer. Yes, I would say yes to a show where they offered me a regular gig because I hopefully could make it interesting for myself and I would be able to develop a character and blah, 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 and it would lead to other great things. But it's not as clear cut as it used to be. I mean, I've worked on shows where I've seen the regular come in and sort of be a little dead behind the eyes because they're looking at the sides, walking from the trailer to the scene, and they sort of memorize it as they're walking over. They shoot the scene, they say the few nonsense lines that doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, and they go back to the trailer.
Yep.
And they're paid very well for that. So who am I to diss that? But it is a little scary because you can see them having lost sort of that joy of acting that they must have had at some point to go through the nonsense that we do in this industry. So that's definitely a cost of taking on something like that. And so now I understand why people leave shows. They just get burned out, or they realize I want to do something else with my life, or I want to be a producer. I want to produce scripts that matter, right? Because at the end of the day, you want to do things that impact something. And sometimes writing on network shows can be challenging. They have to churn out 22 episodes a year.
Mhm.
And most of them do an incredible job of that. But that's tough. You know,
Oh, and not only do they make so many episodes, there's scenes that get cut for time that, on the surface of it, you think, well, they know how long they have to fill and they know about approximately how much each scene should take. How can they possibly shoot more than they need? Isn't that going to impact the story? But you've been in shows and you've lost scenes, right?
sure. Well, they want to have options in the editing room. And then so many factors come in. It depends on star power. You know, they want to make sure they give X amount of space time to the stars, the recurring co-stars or whatever. You know, they don't need them as much. When they write, they fill in stuff that, in hindsight, they realize we don't really need it. It's just that was for mood and tone.
It's for safety.
It was there for safety to have some extra time. Like, so, when you're a character for one episode, you look at your lines and I'm like, am I saying something that they really need? Because if I'm just saying something where I'm offering a menu in a restaurant as a waiter, and I say, you'll have this, and what will you have in your tea, and what will you have with your pasta, and you leave. But in the script, it was like 8 lines. You're like, that's great. But the 8 lines mean nothing because they don't move the story along at all. So most likely, if they're going to cut anything, you're the first thing to get cut. Whereas if you say, oh, don't forget the key is behind the door in room 228, they can't cut that because otherwise that information is not going to come across. So you become pretty adept at looking at your script and knowing if you're cuttable or not cuttable. And that's, it's a horrible way to look at work, but that's just the nature of the beast. So now I have a much better sense when I go into any TV work or whatever, if I have a chance at making it intact, or if I'm going to get snipped here and there. And, sometimes it's hard to predict.
Well, also, there's a big difference between when you are shooting your own work, your own film, and doing something for somebody else, either a short film or a TV show. You have to have come across a time or 12 where you're like, well, this is just stupid, but it's not mine. I don't care. Or, do you offer a tweak or two?
Well, on TV, no. On TV, absolutely not. You have to be so careful with taking anybody's time on TV. My very, very first TV experience was on Law and Order with Jerry Orbach back in the day. I just moved to New York. I got like a 2-liner. And I came from theater. I came from that environment. And I was just in New York for like 4 months. And I shoot this scene. And we're about to shoot the scene. We blocked it, whatever. Now in hindsight, I'm kind of rolling my eyes going, I wish I'd known more, but I didn't. So we're blocking the whole thing. I guess it's stressful. You have the 50 people around, whatever. And then right before we shoot the scene, I go, excuse me, to the director, who I'm not going to say who it was, but it was a returning director who hadn't directed an episode in a while. So he sort of came back. And I said, excuse me, do I know that the police is in the room when I enter the room, or do I not know? Because to me, that was important, how I entered the room. What kind of confidence level? Am I afraid? So to me, that was a theater question. That was normal. It was about my motivation. It was about what I knew. And the whole crew went silent. And I noticed it straight away. Everybody just went. And I was like, wait. And then the director at the top of his lungs just went, walk through the effing door. That was it. And he didn't say effing. He said the real word. And it was so outrageous. At the top of his lungs, he yelled that at me. It was so outrageous that I just remember going, wow, this guy is a dick. So I'm just going to go back and make my choice. I mean, I wasn't intimidated because he was so over the top. He could have intimidated me and made me feel stupid in a million better ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was so outrageous, I was like, well, he's just a jerk. I don't care about him. So I went backstage, made my choice, and then just before shooting, somebody taps me on the shoulder, and it's the director. He has tiptoed the entire outside of the set, and he comes back and says, yes, you know they're there. And then he tiptoed all the way back to the seat, and then we shot the scene. And it was like, and it was just an eye-opener that since then, I would make sure not to have questions in the moment. because there's so much pressure on everybody when you're then finally ready to shoot, that if you have any questions about anything, you'll try to find space. If it's really important to you, you find a space before you even get to rehearsal and see if you can get to the assistant director to ask the director, and then it gets back to you that way. But you can't do it in the moment. At least that's my experience. I would never do it in the moment.
So you've done sci-fi films and drama. You're big into that.
Horror? Lots of
Horror. I've seen that one comedy you had at Love Your Shorts one year. You were, it wasn't your film, but it was one you were in. And
Okay.
So watching, ingesting, what are some of your favorites? What are some of your favorite films or directors or?
Sort of in the bigger scheme of things?
Yeah, just what do you relax with? What do you like? What are you into?
That's, I mean, in terms of, I like so many different things, and some films surprise me when I like them or when I don't like them. So it's hard for me to sort of put an umbrella thing on that. I like when a filmmaker has paid attention to details.
Mm-hmm.
That impresses me. When I feel like nothing is by chance, and then that could be then any genre or any type of film really. If I can tell that nothing has happened by chance and that they're aware of editing, they're aware of how a scene cuts into the next, what the trajectory of the film is, the characters have arcs, all that stuff, performances, have they directed the background actors, all that stuff will then come into like the package that really impresses me.
You watch with a critical eye. Can you just turn that off?
I cannot. That's why sometimes film festivals can be painful, because it's hard for me to watch nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And that is to my detriment. I totally recognize that that's a flaw that I have, but I cannot watch a movie anymore without a critical eye. And it doesn't mean that I'm comparing it to my own work or that they're better or worse than me. It's just some things drive me crazy when I see that it hasn't been handled right. Because to me, it shows they haven't thought it through, or most of the time it's because people have shot a script too soon. They haven't done the work that they needed to do on it. And so, you know, to some people that comes across as arrogant, but, you know, I try to be supportive and I try to be, put a brave face on everything, but, you know, often it's hard for me to sit through sort of younger festival films, at least.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we've all had our share of cringeworthy film festivals.
Oh, I've been part of it. Trust me, I've been there myself. You know,
Yep.
and I could still do it again. Who knows? I mean, it's easy to lose track. You know, you find things that you think you got it, and then the next project you forgot what you thought you knew, and then you have to re-find it, and that's part of the trajectory, I guess. But you know, like my favorite film of all time, without a doubt, is Cabaret, for instance. I'm not a musical person. I don't particularly like musicals, but that film was like the first where I really realized how crucial editing is to a project. The editing is impeccable. The script writing is impeccable. And the work of the DP is just astounding. And then of course you put in that the actor's great and that the story has something to say. And I know why Bob Fosse made that movie. You know, he has a real point of view. All those things come together in that film. There's nothing in that film that I see a flaw with. So to me, that's like the perfect film.
God, I haven't seen that film as an adult. I saw it as a kid, so I guess I need to rewatch that one.
I really wish you would. I think I've seen that film over 40 times.
Wow.
And that doesn't happen. I mean, I barely watch anything twice. That film I could watch any day of the week.
Well, next time you come down to Love Your Shorts, I've got spare bedrooms. You can stay here. We'll have a cabaret night.
I love it. Let's do it. That's super cool. I would love to do that.
Okay. Well, I guess that's about wraps it up. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing a meal with me, as we've done so many times before.
You finished way before me, by the way, which just means I've been prattling on like a dumbass, and you've been
that's
patient with my nonsense.
To interview you. So I appreciate all the time that you've given. And boy, I can't wait to see you again. So are you going to Austin?
I am going to Austin. Again, it's one of my favorite festivals. And
Austin Revolution Film Festival, everyone.
Austin Revolution, James Christopher runs a tight ship with his wife, Jessica. They're doing an incredible job down there. And I don't know if I'll have anything in it this year, just because so little things have been shooting.
Right.
You know, I've shot a feature and then the TV show, but I haven't really done a short this past year. So I don't think I have anything coming out. But I think James might take older shorts because he skipped a year.
Yeah.
So I did a fabulous short with a lovely director out in LA called Hermit. And I think she might have submitted it to Austin. So it would be great if it came in. It's fun to go to a festival with something.
Yes.
We'll see if that happens.
True.
Otherwise, maybe I'll try to submit a script or something, and we'll see if I get in. What about you? Are you going to submit anything?
Yeah, well, I submitted for 2021, which was pushed. No, 2020. The 2020
They're
circuit.
going to mix the two. They're going to mix the 2 years, right?
Yes, exactly. So my film from 2020 got in, and I'm looking forward to going.
That's fantastic. Is this a project you've done solo or with Dale Metz?
No, this one is by myself.
Great.
But you know, he and I are actually getting together to shoot something in August next month.
Fantastic.
I'll tell
No better team. Yeah.
Yeah, we have fun, and I like submitting to festivals in places where I want to go and see, and it's just even better when people like you, my festy bestie, show up.
That's right.
And we can have fun.
It's always great to see people and catch up with people, what everybody has done, and I love seeing people's work. So yeah, exactly. I'm excited that festivals are gradually returning to normal. Because virtual just isn't the same thing.
Well, I got to admit, the last time, I think it was the last time we were in Austin, Gwen really loved your birthday greeting video.
Yes, that was your kilt. You were wearing a kilt, I remember.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's great.
Okay, well, we'll wrap it up, and thank you very much, Lucas, and hopefully we'll see more from you soon, and I'll see you in Austin.
I'll keep you posted, good sir. Thanks for everything.